All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here on the Harmless Dave channel, talking about music or the end of music or opinions about genres. I think it's kind of interesting, so I'm going to give this a try and doing it in real time for a few real people out here, just like you there and just like me right here. So, I don't normally do this, but a video popped up in my feed, and I don't typically watch a lot of videos on YouTube. But Rick Beato, who is probably 100 times smarter than me when it comes to music, I'm just going to say he's smarter. And I'm here as kind of a clown show. I've been called all kinds of different things here. And admittedly, I am stream of consciousness. You're not going to see editing here. I'm not going to stop unless I'm about to sneeze or something. I'm not going to stop the tape here. And so the things that come out are sometimes random. They sometimes don't go together. But Rick Beato did this video about the end of genres. And he gave some examples of songs that are currently popular that are hard to define, or we would categorize them as something, say, years ago, but today they don't do that. And he said some interesting things about the 1990s, how that was like the last real era that had a style and a sense about it. He mentioned too, like the late 90s and early 2000s and all of the boy band stuff and kind of the alt pop music that was popular at the time, saying that that might have been kind of a genre, a collective. And he did make some points that I agree with. We no longer have a collective radio listening experience, which I've said before on the old channel. I said that numerous times. You turn on the radio and it's new stuff, and it's hard for somebody my age to take it seriously because a lot of these songs they just don't speak to me. They don't, and it could be my age, but either the message or the style of music, the singers themselves tend to be irritating to me. And Rick was talking about how the 90s singers were like the pinnacle of singing. And wow, I don't agree with that because I just don't. Now, you could talk about the lead singer of Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Stone Temple Pilots, all these different singers who all sort of sounded like Cookie Monster to me. They just did. That's the style. I will say that they were all kind of shooting for the same thing. They had more of a dark sounding vocal, and they were singing a lot of dark type subject matter. That's what they were doing. And give it credit for what it was. It's not my cup of tea, and I would not define that as like the best. Like in the 90s, we reached our pinnacle. I'll tell you what, people from the 1950s, they believe the 50s, they were the best. People in the 1960s swear by the 60s. They can't speak more highly than they do about that music. The 70s, same. 70s rock, man, that's just the best. Led Zeppelin, Bad Company, that whole decade. The 80s, for many of us, the 80s were the pinnacle. And the 80s were a great melting pot of music. Whereas today, we are seeing the end of genres, and today's generation doesn't seem to have a problem with that. It's kind of the same concept as, hey, there's a border or a line here. Let's just erase that. Let's just get rid of that border. Well, sometimes there's a reason that there's a border there and there's a line. And, I'm not just talking about music. I'm talking about geography in this case. I'm talking about, hey, this group of people is famous for this type of culture, and this is where they live. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. It's okay if they cross that line, so long as each culture can kind of retain their uniqueness. And now we're starting to see the same thing happen with music. It's almost as if there's a one world music order trying to come together. Now, I know this kind of sounds like the old me here, but follow this, because I don't think making the genres the same is a good idea. And Rick Beato isn't saying that, by the way. He isn't saying that, oh, this is a good thing. But he, much like one of my old DJ friends, says, well, we're in a cycle. We're just in a cycle, and it's all going to boomerang. It's going to come back. We're in year 30-something. 30-something years of the boomerang not boomeranging back, okay? No editing here. It's just me. So I wrote some things down. So again, and this is something that Steve Perry and the guy who is interviewing him were talking about in this latest podcast. It's interesting that Beato was talking about genres, because the podcaster was saying to Perry, hey, isn't this cool that there's no more genre? Perry pushed back a little and said, well, it was cool in the old days when you could hear an R&B song next to a pop song, next to a country song, next to a hard rock song, and they would all coexist and get along with each other. That's basically what Perry said. And the other guy's saying, no. It's good that there is no more definition. Well, why can't we have a definition for something? This is just bizarre to me. Oh, you don't have to worry about it. If you're a country and you feel like you need to make this into an R&B song, which country right now is in a full free fall, go listen to Morgan Wallen, all right? He's a country guy. I heard a song by him the other day, and I had to listen to it again, not because I liked the song per se, but because I'm like, this is country now, because he sings with a southern accent. That makes it country. The music, the whole production has no association with traditional country music. And if you want to know what I think it's Hank Williams and Waylon Jennings and Old Willie Nelson, and I don't know. Go back in time. Merle Haggard. I mean, that's country music, folks. All right? And if you stick up for tradition these days, no matter what subject you're talking about, you typically get destroyed. Do rap and metal go together? Well, this has been going on for quite some time, actually. There were bands in the early 90s that were combining rap and metal. I thought it was weird then. Look, I liked people singing. That's what I liked. I was never a big rap fan. But to be honest with you, the very early days of rap I thought were pretty interesting. All right. And then the subject matter got really dark, and I just wasn't into it, or they were really being vulgar, and I didn't like that either. These are forms of music that they're not feel good, or they're not gonna like make your soul feel good. That's my own opinion. Here's another thing I wrote down. Another form of music that didn't have a category, and this has to do again with what Steve Perry was talking about the other day, is now made fun of, and it was never in a category before. And I'm talking about yacht rock, right? Which to me is just really great music that required a high degree of efficiency and technical ability to play. Steely Dan, those records, man, look on the record sleeve of a Steely Dan album, and it's like an orchestra, based on all the different people they have and what they're doing and the names and the talent level there. These guys, they knew they had to get it right. And was it Walter Becker and Donald Fagen? They got it right, and I wish there was that level of dedication to making albums today, but there just isn't. So I also mentioned here the subject matter. It's mostly vacuous. I'm talking about today. It can be dark. It can be self-loathing. It can be just a bunch of riddles that come along, some phrasing that sounds interesting, words that don't really go together. I've heard these songs where I'm like, what is this song even about? Now, you can go back pretty far in time and hear examples of that, but I think it's the norm now rather than being the exception. So, just to counter Rick Beato, he likes singers from the 90s. Some examples of singers that I think might be better than those singers: Steve Walsh from Kansas, Steve Walsh, Jimmy Jamison of Survivor, Steve Perry from Journey, Don Barnes of 38 Special, Mike Reno of Loverboy, Sammy Hagar, solo and of course with Van Halen, and the great Lou Gramm. Those are singers I grew up listening to, and that's just a small list. Pat Benatar, if you want to go over to the ladies, and Ann Wilson, Patti Smythe. I mean, there are just some great. Linda Ronstadt, who I think is the greatest female singer to walk planet Earth. I don't know how you can compare anything that's come along later on. Remember, no auto-tune in those days, no technology to enhance or to make you sound better. We don't know how they're making records today, mostly on computers. And I would also say that there's a lack of identity in general when it comes to human beings today. Now, this might sound kind of controversial, but people seem to like that. They don't want to be stereotyped. They don't want to be put into a category. And so I think the music is now reflecting that. And I know you could have a 2-hour discussion on just that one issue about how, if you don't have a real strong identity, if the culture doesn't have a strong identity, then it's going to balkanize, it's going to fracture, and the music is doing what the culture is doing to some degree. Here's one thing I know for sure. Great musicians, for the most part, don't play on today's records, okay? Again, take out a record sleeve from 1981, 1979, 1973, 1965. And, back in the old days, they didn't put all that good stuff on the record sleeve. That happened more in the 70s and into the 80s. But you can get an education. Who played on this record? This drummer. He shows up everywhere. He must be really good. Steve Perry knows all about that stuff. He talks about it all the time. One thing I love about Steve is he knows the kind of musicians that are going to give him the sound that he wants, and thus he will bring them in if he's not getting the sound that he's trying to get. So today I think computers are doing all the heavy lifting. And here's something that Rick didn't touch on: AI. AI is going to make things a lot worse. I've been hearing some discussions about AI, and it's not good. It's not good. If you want authentic, real music, you're probably going to get fooled, number one. And number two, it's going to eliminate the need for people like playing this stuff. I say let's go back into a studio that has analog recording equipment and make some really great music. But that's not where we're headed. We're headed in a direction where you're going to hear little bits and pieces of what you remember. And you're going to say, yeah, that's such and such and so. We can duplicate that. We don't need the original Steve Perry. We can have the AI Perry do what Perry did. And as the technology gets better and better, they're going to put out Steve Perry records that sound like Steve Perry did in 1981. And people are going to love it. Look what they did with the country singer. Randy Travis. Look what they did with Randy Travis, where he couldn't really sing anymore, and they sampled his voice, and then they had someone who was basically like a surrogate singer go in, and then they put Randy over this surrogate singer. I don't know how they did this, but you listen to the track and you're like, yeah, it sounds like Randy Travis to me. I don't hear a big difference between that and the actual Randy Travis. And so if you love a singer and you want to hear more from that singer, I think you're going to be able to get a lot more probably soon. And people aren't going to object enough to stop it. And what they'll probably do is cut the original singer or the heirs. If that person is no longer on planet Earth, they'll say, "Hey, we'll give you 10. We'll give you more than Spotify gives artists, right? We'll give you 10% if you let us do this, and you'll make millions of dollars because people want to hear this particular. They want to hear what Jimmy Jamison sounded like in Survivor in 1986, and people will, I bet you, go for that. So there needs to be a discussion of all of that stuff. But as far as the music industry right now, there is no support system. I've said this over and over again, and this is a point that Rick touched on a little bit when he talked about Napster and, you know, Spotify and all these different corporations that have really put profits ahead of the artist. And honestly, there needs to be an act of Congress to change that. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but it should be a priority because, look, if you're going to create something of value, you need to be paid for that. It's very clear. And a lot of people, they get frustrated. They're like, yeah, I put out an album. No, and I often say this, nobody really cared. You know, I'll showcase an album and people will go and listen to it. They'll stream it a couple of times. They won't purchase a copy of it. Why should you purchase it if you can just stream it for free? You know, or watch a couple of ads, you know, for products that you're probably not going to buy. So in any event, Rick Beato's analysis about the end of genres is still worth listening to. He did a quick little video, hit on some very big points. I don't agree about the 90s stuff at all. But I think he understands what is currently happening. I don't believe he really said anything negative about how genres are going away. But I would say this, if you don't have genres and you can't define what music sounds like anymore, then I just think you lose the ability to make that particular genre the way it used to be. You continue to change it, water it down. Go listen to that Morgan Wallen song. I don't know what song it is. He's the biggest thing in country music, and a lot of his stuff doesn't sound like country music. So I think that's a big problem going forward. But it's not going to change because this current generation is cool with it. And it's only the old timers that grew up with the best music ever. And I'm not saying that. Other people from the outside have said this. People who are younger have said this. And I'm just here to validate that. But the weird thing is there is good music still being made. And I showcase it here. But again, there's no support system for it. So anyway, folks, not a quick little 6-minute video like Rick did, but I wanted to put in my 2 cents worth. Rick Beato, by the way, is much smarter than I am. He's an actual musician. So again, I will say that I would go ahead and listen to him before you'd listen to anything I have to say about this. I'm just coming along to throw my 2 cents in. Other people probably have strong opinions that everything is evolving and it's going to be fine and you're just the old guy on the front lawn kind of a thing, in which that's probably partly true. But you got to go back. I've been listening to a lot of stuff from the 1950s and 60s, and it's music that isn't in style at all anymore. It's stuff like on the turntable behind me. And it's amazing how the culture has changed. And I don't think it's changed for the better. I don't think we've evolved in the right direction, but some people would disagree. Anyway, I appreciate you watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that. And there's Patreon. Eventually, I think I'm going to have YouTube memberships back, so stay tuned for that. And then there's Buy Me a Coffee. like a tip jar kind of thing to help me out here. I'm rebuilding my platform on YouTube. This will be my last go at this. And after that, if things don't go well, well, anyway, I haven't thought too much about it, but I'm hoping that folks will come back and watch these videos and also like the videos and hang around because there'll be more content. And maybe I don't do this every day. Maybe I do it like once a week or something, but I'll keep trying. So thanks for being here. God bless everyone, and I will talk to you all soon.